Hi guys, we're going to do chapter 2 of The War I Finally Won today. Chapter 2. I knew my mother, Mam, worked nights in a munitions factory in London. I knew bombs were falling on London now, every single night in fierce, horrendous waves. I knew the Germans targeted factories, especially munitions ones. I'd been caught in a bombing raid myself. Brick walls exploded above my head. Afterwards, shattered glass drifted across the streets like snow. So I knew Mam could die. I just didn't believe it. Even despite all the bombs, I thought Mam would live forever. I thought Jamie and I would never be free. I hugged Jamie. He sobbed. He thunked my cast again. I managed not to scream. Susan tucked a pillow between Jamie and my cast. She eased herself onto the corner of the bed. She rubbed Jamie's back. "Is it real?" I asked. "It's real," she said. "Really real?" "I'm sorry," Susan said. I said, "Are you sorry?" Was I sorry? I supposed I was. Maybe. My mother hated me. "You'll never see us again," I'd said to her a week ago in London. She'd said back, "Is that a promise?" Now it was. "This isn't a happy ending," Susan said. "It's not the worst possible ending, but it isn't happy, and I'm sorry for that. I am grateful to have an ending, though. Your mother can't hurt you any more." No, I don't know whether Mam and I could have had a happy ending. I always hoped so. Of course I did. She was my mother. But it was another thing I didn't fully believe. I turned to Jamie. "Why are you sad?" "Mam hated us. She said so." Jamie sobbed harder. "I loved her," he said. Jamie was nicer than me. He probably did love Mam. I didn't. I wished I did. I wished like anything she loved me. I looked at Susan again. "How am I supposed to feel?" "A good daughter would feel sad, I suppose. But if Mam were dead, then I was no longer anyone's daughter. I wasn't sad, I wasn't happy, or angry, or anything." Susan's hand clasped mine over Jamie's narrow back. "However you feel is fine." "Is there a word for feeling nothing?" "Yes," Susan said. "Stunned. I felt stunned when I first heard my mother died." I looked at her. "When did your Mam die?" "A few years ago, several months before Becky." Becky, Susan's very best friend, died of pneumonia 3 years before the war. I knew that. They had lived together. Susan's bombed house had belonged to Becky first, but it was Becky who gave Susan butter. "Both deaths were hard," Susan said. "My feelings about my mother's were more complicated." I let go of Susan's hand. "How did Lady Thornton know about Mam?" "Before last week we'd heard nothing from Mam for an entire year. Not one word, despite all the letters Susan and I wrote her, until she showed up in person to drag me and Jamie back to London." "I'd given the WVS your mother's new address," Susan said. "One of the WVS groups in London contacted Lady Thornton. I suppose they're monitoring the casualty lists." The WVS was the Women's Volunteer Service. They did war work. Susan was part of our village's WVS. Lady Thornton was its head, which made her in charge of evacuees like Jamie and me. Susan reached for my hand again. I pulled it away. Jamie kept crying. I wanted to comfort him, but my insides felt hollow. I didn't know what Jamie and I were if Mam was dead. Could we stay with Susan? Were we still evacuees? "What happens next?" I asked. Susan paused. "I don't know," she said. "I'll ask Lady Thornton about the arrangements." I blinked. My heart stuttered. It wasn't the answer I expected. It wasn't the answer I wanted. Arrangements. The word came ringed with worry. It arrived on a wave of panic. It fell to the pit of my stomach. Where had I heard that word before? Susan didn't say, "Don't worry." She didn't say, "Of course you'll live with me." She didn't say, "I'll make sure you're taken care of." She had said all those things the day she rescued us from Mam for the second time, the day her house was bombed. She said we'd stay together always. I'd believed her. Had she been lying, or did everything else change because Mam died? "Is there a word that means children with dead parents?" I asked. Susan swallowed. She said, "Orphans." Orphans. Jamie and I were orphans now, not evacuees. We wouldn't stay under Lady Thornton's protection. Susan wouldn't be able to keep us. Something different happened to orphans. Pain gripped my gut. It hurt worse than my foot ever had. I tightened my arms round Jamie. I would hang on to him no matter what. I would never let us be separated. "I'll be walking soon," I said. "I'll be very useful then." Susan blinked. "Your recovery will take a few months," she said. "You know that." I said, "I'm very hard-working." "Yes, you are," Susan said, "but you won't heal faster because of it. I don't know if you'll be allowed to leave the hospital, whatever else happens." "Do I have to leave right away?" The state grew worse and worse. No, of course not." Susan sounded distracted. "I only mean for the funeral, if we have one, whatever we do." Funeral, another word I didn't understand. Even after a year of living with Susan, there were so many things I didn't understand. Mam hadn't been much for words, and there was a limit to how much I could teach myself looking out the one window of her flat. Arrangements. "Line up against the wall," Lady Thornton had said last September in her crisp head of the WVS voice. "We're going to make arrangements." We'd just come off the train that had evacuated us to the village from London. A whole herd of dirty, shabby children, and Jamie and me the most wretched-looking of all. I was nearly done in from the effort of getting away, my clubfoot oozing blood and hurting so badly my knees shook. The villagers filed past us, looking us up and down. No one wanted Jamie and me. I was back to that place now, only cleaner, and with my right foot in plaster. "You'd better go," I said, turning my back to Susan. "You'll need to stop making arrangements." So, in this whole thing, Ada is terrified because when Susan says arrangements, she means arrangements from... Say hi to my dog. Just a minute. Jackson. Look at me, Jackson. Oh, look at Jackson. Such a good boy. Such a good boy. We're going to try again, sans Jackson. When Susan said arrangements, she meant the funeral. The funeral was a word Ada didn't know. And arrangements, Ada only knew one definition for. We talk about words a lot when we're reading stories out loud, because the fact that Ada doesn't know what one word means where Susan in her brain is planning a funeral for Ada's mother. In Ada's brain, she's making arrangements for Ada to go somewhere else. That's why words are important. So we're going to do like we've always done. On the notes below, if there was a word you didn't understand today, I want you to ask me about it. If there was a situation that you didn't understand, I want you to ask me about it, because one word, not knowing one word, can change everything. See you tomorrow, guys. Bye.